as specifically, if we just bring it down to the United States here, that burden falls on all of us because we're going to see it in price increase on our foods, on our. It will cause inflation. The government doesn't take money and just give it away. They take it from us, all of us, including the people you're trying to give reparations to, and then or who have been given reparations to, if what he was saying was factual. Marcel was saying, um, and then we all end up paying for that. I mean, that is inflation, and it's higher taxes if they choose to tax. But you don't have to tax Americans. You just inflate the products, and then you'll get the taxes on the back end. So it's not a. It's. I say we all just be grateful to just exist. Be grateful to just have been born as privileged as we are as Americans, or be grateful to have immigrated to this country. I've never met, by the way, an African American, first or second generation African American, that has ever not been more patriotic than most of the the entire people born in the United States. They are some of the most grateful people I've ever met in my life, and it makes me feel extremely proud to know, like, these people love America more than I do. How amazing is that a country that we live in, immigrants that go through the proper channels have more respect for it than we do. And I think that's my stance on reparations. Universally, I just don't think that we should
Okay.
try to damage others. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for your input. Okay, so I have Javon over on YouTube, and I want Tariq to consider this and answer this whenever he comes up. Let me remove conservative. Um, Hold on, where'd he go? Javon says, with regard to reparations, that he believes money and some kind of free college education and housing would be ideal payment. So I don't know what Marcel or Tariq thinks about that. I am curious about that. Okay, so that was Javon, and I'm looking over here at well, yeah, it's some of the other comments, which if you're on YouTube, you know are pretty lively. Okay, who was next?
We have Storm City and then Alpha.
Yeah, hey, good afternoon. I just want to say, Monica, I want to commend you for, allowing for everyone's voice to be heard. Unfortunately, there's a lot of valid points all the way around. Unfortunately, the financial system, the Act of 1871, if we follow the money throughout these periods of time, we've essentially all been discriminated against. My grandfather flew B-25s, which you've already known, in World War II. He didn't receive any benefits whatsoever. He's Caucasian. And, the Union soldiers, when they got beat in Louisiana, they burned down all the communities from northern Louisiana all the way down Red River, all the way back down. And so, I understand the arguments on all sides, but, essentially today we have this quasi corporation that exists, and it's facilitated by a third party with the central bank, and it should go into chapter 11. It should fail. And essentially, we should have a new financial system that doesn't discriminate against 100% of Americans. And we should have a pathway forward to be inclusive of every American, irregardless of their past and history. Everyone should have a fair shot at living a very prosperous life. And that's all I wanted to say. I wanted to
Yeah.
commend you, Monica, for the space. I did want to thank Marcel and his great grandfather for serving in World War II. And there's a lot of veterans. All veterans should be honored for their sacrifices that they've made. And it's unfortunate that our government skirts around anybody that's deserving It's justified in my opinion. But the future generations like myself, I don't ask for anything. I go on, and the heritage and history and historical relevancy of my family is a tradition that it lives on, and it's stories, and it's historical record.
Yeah.
But that's all I wanted to share. Thanks, Monica.
Sure, of course. Thank you for that. Okay, I want to go to Tariq next, and then we'll go over to Alpha, because I and some of you other guys are in this space, because I'm going to have to switch up on my rig over here, losing battery on some things, but the conversation's good. I hope it's productive to you guys. It has been for me, enlightening for sure. And so, yeah, Tariq, welcome.
Hey, how are you, Monica?
Hey, good, sir. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's very interesting. Whenever we start talking about reparations for foundational Black Americans, we notice that a lot of the conversations, the logic is just all over the place to deny compensating foundational Black Americans.
Okay,
Nobody.
stop. I need you to do us a favor, because not everyone in this room, remember I said before I brought you up, a lot of people don't understand that there is a foundational Black Americans heart in this country, ideology, movement, whatever you want to call it. And then there's the Black immigrants. Okay. And I've been in a few of those spaces, so I've been privy to those conversations, but a lot of people in this space who follow me are not. So if you could educate us on that, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Oh, it's real simple, ladies and gentlemen. A foundational Black American is a Black person in America who's not an immigrant. It's that simple. Foundational Black Americans, we are actually the only non-immigrant group here. We're the only group who built the United States from the bottom up, from scratch. There was no United States until foundational Black Americans built it. So we are exclusively the real natives of the United States. We are the Aboriginal people of the United States because we built this nation from the bottom up. So that's what a foundational Black American is. We're not African American. We don't like to even use the term Black American too much because Rachel Dolezal is a Black American. We're a foundational Black Americans. We like to specify what group we are and what our lineage is. This is a lineage claim. And when we talk about reparations for the lineage of foundational Black Americans, a lot of people get into a lot of nonsensical justifications to deny it. They talk about, well, we should all be grateful that we were born with the privilege to be here. Foundational Black Americans, we don't have a privilege. We built something that nobody else built. So that's not a privilege. That's something that you work for, and we were not compensated for it. We always hear the narrative that other groups are coming over here and they're so happy and grateful that they came over here. Well, yeah, you're grateful because you're benefiting from something that you didn't really work for. You came over here and just pulled up a chair to a table that was already made for you. So, yeah, you would be grateful to that. Foundational Black Americans, we built the table, set the table, built the plates, and built the cups, and we were never compensated for it. And this is what we're talking about, reparations. We have to get reparations in the form of cash. I heard somebody was talking about free education and all of this nonsense. My family, when they were forced to work on these prison camps, which were plantations, because they were prison camps, that's all they were forced to work, and their labor was exploited from them. They didn't get exploited for free education. They were giving these white supremacists money. The white supremacists made billions of dollars off the backs of my family. I want some of the money that they made. Give me exactly what they took from my family. I don't want food stamps. I don't want Starbucks coupons. I don't want a free education. I don't want little trinkets and widgets. We need cash payments the same way they give everybody else cash payments when they are aggrieved. When the Japanese were aggrieved, they gave them cash payments. When other groups are aggrieved, they give them cash payments. Even people who are non-citizens, the Ukrainians, are getting cash payments. And they're not even citizens. Certain Hispanic groups are getting cash payments. They're not even citizens. Afghanistanians are getting cash payments. They're not even citizens. Nobody has a problem with other groups getting cash payments from the United States government. It's only a problem when foundational Black Americans are supposed to get cash payments. And we've never gotten anything exclusive from the government that we actually built. And the reason why is because part of white supremacist culture is to define their culture from our deprivation. They gave gauge their progress on
But
the level of our
did you
deprivation.
build it? Did you
Yes,
build the building?
Hey,
yes,
Mimi, I
yes,
had my
ma'am.
hand up, Mimi. So when you're
Yes,
done, I'm gonna go next.
yes, Mimi, I did build it because I am my family and my family is me. My ancestors and I are one and the same. So, yes, I did build it, ma'am. And the money that was generated from me and my family, I'm including myself because I am my ancestors, that money and the wealth and resources was locked into white supremacist society, and we were specifically deprived of getting access to those resources and funds. And those maldistributed resources have been passed down generationally to the white supremacists today. So they are on the hook for it because the government is on the hook for it. I don't want to hear stories about, well, I came over here from Ireland in 1920. I didn't own a slave, but you came over here to a government that had created itself from maldistributing resources, from exploiting foundational Black Americans. So you are complicit in utilizing those funds. The reason why people came over here, they saw that there was a good deal going on. They saw that there was a lot of money and resources that was generated from Black people. And they saw that if they were classified as white, they can come over here and get a piece of the pie. That makes you complicit with the criminal activity of racial exploitation of foundational Black Americans. People have all of these excuses to justify why we should be deprived and we should be a permanent underclass, which we should not be. And let's be clear, reparations are already being paid in the form of all of these militarized police surplus um, trinkets that they have. The police and the military, they spend all of this money. They spend trillions of dollars trying to codify and trying to pacify the collective psyche of white society by subjugating us. They have to subjugate us militarily. That's where a lot of the reparations are going. Because if you try to subjugate a people and do it militarily, the money is going to run out eventually. So instead of just throwing money away to law enforcement, who they don't really protect you, to be perfectly honest. Law enforcement, they don't really protect you, but you get a psychological satisfaction seeing Black people getting militarily dominated by law enforcement and the U.S. military in this country in order to make you sleep better at night. Like, hey, we got these Negroes in check. You're already paying reparations. You're paying reparations now. It would be best to pay reparations in a just way. And that's what we're trying to do now. And that's what we're going to do. The reparations will be paid. Let's be very clear. We cannot have a system of white supremacist domination just indefinitely. That's just not going to happen. Too many of us are pushing back from that. Foundational Black Americans, we have not been a group of people who are psychologically defeated. A lot of other people from other places, they've been psychologically defeated. We have not. We still resist systematic white supremacy. We're not afraid. These terrorist attacks that they launched, they're designed to make us afraid, and that's just not going to happen. We're going to stand firm, and we're definitely going to get reparations. Let me get some people to chime in on that.
So Tariq, there are a lot of people who would say that you paint all of white America with a broad stroke. So do you believe, and so I'm just going to ask you, instead of people saying, well, why didn't you ask him this? I'm just going to ask you, do you see most of, if not all, of white America as being supremacist at their core and criminal by, our very existence?
Okay. No, I don't. But the problem is the white supremacists are more powerful than the people in white society who are not white supremacists. We do not have a system of white supremacy if there's not a lot of participants in it. And unfortunately, you have not given us a master list of who the white supremacists are. So in many cases, we have to assume and suspect certain people to be white supremacists. We have a system of global white supremacy. That is an absolute. That's not anything to debate. And the reason why we know it is because the white supremacists told us. That term comes from your community. The term white supremacy, they try to make it seem like it's an offensive term. Your community told us you were white supremacists. They drilled it in our heads up until the 1960s. You went out of your way to tell us how supreme you are and how much of a white supremacist you are and how proud you are to be white supremacists. Thomas Jefferson talked about being a white supremacist and the importance of white supremacy.
Hold up. I never said that I was anything related to these people that you're talking about. So
Okay, hit dog,
just
hit dog, hit dog, hit dog. I don't even know you. What, hit dog hollering, sir? I don't know you. What are you talking about, sir? I don't even
no,
know you.
you just said you sit there, your culture, you're
In your
framing it in a
community,
certain way.
in your community,
Your
your
community.
community. Yeah, the white community.
I've never had that community. Like, I don't understand where I want to ask you some hard questions, after you're done, but go ahead,
Okay,
continue.
but hit dog. But you do acknowledge that it was people in the white community, which you're a part of. You're part of the white community. They were going around telling people in books, in laws, even the Supreme Court. They had a ruling, the Dred Scott decision. They talked about how supreme the white race is. I mean, nobody was pushing back from that. See, don't try to play the game and escape the name. Nobody was pushing back from that in the dominant society. So don't go
But
now and say, "Oh,
that's
I didn't
racism
think
to
that."
apply that to a person who is not currently saying that. You're using racism as a weapon in this situation. You're
How so?
literally that's racist to call someone racist who is not.
I didn't call you a racist. I
You
never said.
did. You just said
No,
you're
I didn't.
part of a community that is racist and therefore you are
I
racist.
literally didn't
And
say
that
those words, sir. You're
you
doing on
don't
white.
have to. I'm listening to what you're saying very clearly, and I
You're doing.
understand the
You're
subtext and
practicing on
all the
white.
language. I'm
That's on.
listening.
I didn't say that at all. You're making up words, sir. That's called I'm white and I say so, sir. Are you
Okay, Tariq, let
practicing
me ask
white
No,
you
supremacy?
something. Hold on, let me ask Tariq. What is your definition of a white supremacist?
A person who believes through speech, thought, and action that they should be dominant over non-white people. That's what a white supremacist is.
Okay.
And that's, you know
I think
why? And
most
that's what
people
they
in this
told us.
space would actually agree with that.
And that's what they told us. They told us that they were white supremacists. The people in your community, the white community, you're part of the white community. They told us they were white supremacists up until the 1960s openly. That's your term. That's not a term that I created, ma'am, sir.
I understand that. I
Okay.
understand. And I understand where you're coming from with that. I also
We
remember I
didn't we
said
didn't
before
put
he
up
chimed
white
in.
only signs. We didn't put up
Yeah,
whites only
listen.
signs.
Let me tell you something. My father, who is now gone on to be in glory, was Greek, and I have in my family albums those signs that included Greeks, and they were not nice signs. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, so they were awful signs. No N words, no Jews, no Greeks. Yeah, so I get it. My family gets it. My mother is a legal German immigrant. I get it. But I don't get it from the perspective of being a foundational Black American, because clearly I'm not one. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I was married to one who is now deceased, and my daughter has had a very interesting time coming up in the South, as well as going to the West Coast for higher education. I now have a beautiful granddaughter who will hopefully be able to circumvent some of this mess that we're all still contending with. I don't know.
So you were married to a foundational Black American man.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me ask you this. Do you think that being in marriages or even sexual relationships with a Black person negates white supremacy in a person?
Not any more than I think it can negate Black supremacy tendencies in a person.
What's Black supremacy?
Exactly what you stated was white supremacy.
You can't
Only.
have two supreme. By definition,
But you can, Tariq, because it's an
two.
ideology, it's a mindset,
Ma'am.
it is a spirit set that people can set themselves
By
above the
definition,
Creator.
you can't have two supremes. By definition, it's
By
completely illogical.
definition, no, none of us are supreme outside of God.
Ma'am, there's a
Would you agree
supreme.
with that?
No, there's a system. Supreme means I can kill your group and your group can't kill mine.
Which I don't think anyone in this space agrees with, and anyone who is in this space who agrees with that should exit stage right. But let me ask you.
Wait. Are you saying that's not?
You're saying from
Are you saying that's not true? What supreme means? My group can kill your group with impunity, and your group can't kill mine. Your group
that's
can
called
kill
power.
my group with impunity.
That's called power.
Ma'am, the butter biscuits are not on display right now. I'm talking to Monica. So am I telling the truth, ma'am? Your group can kill my group with impunity. My group cannot kill yours with impunity. That's what supreme means, ma'am, right?
Tariq.
Ma'am.
No one can kill any other group with impunity,
yes, they
according
can.
to the laws of this land.
Yes, they can.
That shall not
in
kill.
a lawful society.
Yeah. Name the black
Thou
version
shalt
of
not
Kyle
kill.
Rittenhouse. Name the black version of Kyle Rittenhouse and
You
the
can
black
make a
version of
lot of
Zimmerman.
arguments.
Okay, well let's
There are
do this.
many.
Show
Yeah.
situations where black people have killed white people and they're just walking around free right now and being paraded as heroes like the Kyle Rittenhouses and other people.
Well, who was the gentleman that was on my list of other black gentlemen who who engaged in mass shooting, who was legitimately out within 4 hours of being nabbed? So that's. But here's the thing, Tariq.
Ma'am,
Listen, we are
he shot some
better.
other
Listen,
black
we're
people.
better. We are
Ma'am,
better than this
he shot some other
conversation.
black people and he got bail. That's not the same thing. He didn't get
We
acquitted. He
are
just got bail.
better. We're
Ma'am,
better, Tariq.
ma'am,
Come on
you guys
now.
are.
We're better.
We're
We're
better.
better.
At
You're
what?
better than this.
Better as
You
what?
have such influence in this country, and it is mind-blowing
You're
to
deflecting,
me
by the way,
that
man. Why are you
I'm
deflecting?
not deflecting at all. I'm telling
You're
you
deflecting
exactly
now,
what I've always stood by, Tariq. That
ma'am.
any
You're
type of
deflecting.
I am higher than another being has been set in motion since the fall. That is a spiritual issue that fleshes itself out here in our system. I will agree with you that we have had that system in place in this country, and it has not
We
been
still do.
completely mitigated. I
We
agree
still
with
do.
you on that.
Now, Monica, you said something earlier that reparations has been atoned for. What was that, please? I
I'm
got to hear that.
speaking from the spiritual perspective. And so if you're not going to step to me with spirituality, this is not a conversation for us to have. If you're talking about
So
systemically
how
and
so?
politically, that's a different conversation.
So how
Because
is
the
it atoned
blood of
for
Christ,
spiritually?
Tariq, atoned for all of our sins from now into eternity. That's what I believe.
So you're saying that y'all shouldn't give us reparations because Jesus has forgiven you?
I'm saying Jesus forgave all of our sins, including but not limited
Good
to
Lord.
slavery. You don't have to
a
agree with
question.
that. That's
Can
fine.
Lord.
That's
Tariq, I have a
fine.
question though. Like my
Okay.
ancestors,
This is what I'm
before
talking
you were
about.
born, my ancestors were fighting for abolition and helping to run the Underground Railroad. We were fighting and putting our lives at risk to end the system of slavery. My relatives had settled before the American Revolution in Pennsylvania, and we helped to fight for this. And then you're telling me that I'm part of a racist community
Okay.
of
Let
white
me
Dan,
tell
I'm
you
sorry.
this.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Let
I have to address
me
Mimi.
Marcel, let me get him.
Hey,
Okay.
Marcel, please let me get him.
I've
Marcel,
been waiting very
okay,
patiently. So
okay,
no, you can't
let me
you can't
address that
interrupt.
real quick, Shout out to Marcel. Let me address that. Okay, first of all, a lot of those abolitionists, that was a finesse game. They would sit up there and use black people in order to get money for themselves, just like with Save the Children today. They were the Sally Struthers of their day. Like, oh, look at these poor downtrodden people
So you'll
sending us
discount,
money.
you're
Sending
just going
us
to
money.
continually discount anybody who did anything to only say that if you're only this skin color, you're good, and
But
otherwise you're
don't
evil.
sit here talking about your abolitionist parents or grandparents helping black people. Black people were
I've
free.
said helping to run the Underground Railroad. That
Man,
means
the black
getting
people
people out of slavery, and you're
we
telling
were
me
getting
that don't
ourselves out of
matter.
slavery. We were getting
You're still
ourselves out of slavery.
racist, is what
Stop
you
it. We
just
were
said to
getting,
me.
I'm saying that we were getting ourselves out of slavery. We were setting up shop in the Great Dismal Swamps down in Florida, down in St. Malo, Louisiana. We, as foundational Black Americans, we had our own Underground Railroad where we were fleeing and fixing and freeing ourselves from white supremacist domination. And certain white abolitionists were capitalizing off that. People like Susan B. Anthony and all of those women, they started off as abolitionists. And then later on, you saw how anti-Black racist they were when it came to real Black issues and Black people getting real equality. Those abolitionists were damn near just as racist as some of the other white supremacists. So please don't play the abolitionist game, sir. Some of us know our history.
And Mimi, I'm Alpha. I was in here, but I got dropped. I'm just going to be very brief, like I was expecting to be. Mimi, when I say they, I'm referring to the U.S. federal government. So I need everyone to stop saying that I never owned slaves or my parents are immigrants. It doesn't matter. In 1840s, cotton was over 50% of this country's GDP. That's just cotton alone. And it was grown mainly in 4 states, South Carolina, Mississippi, Louisiana, in Georgia. That doesn't include sugar, that doesn't include rice, that doesn't include indigo, that doesn't take into account all the railroads that were being laid or the ports that was being built. A study was just done. Y'all can Google it, showing that infrastructure built by people who were enslaved still brings in trillions of dollars to this country. I was born in Savannah, Georgia. Savannah, Georgia is 25 minutes from me over the bridge in Georgia. The port of Savannah is the third busiest port in the U.S. Guess who built it? Slave labor. Port of Charleston, ninth busiest in the United States of America. Guess who built it? Slave labor. Charleston gets billions of dollars in tourism for people to come here and eat their red rice and the shrimp and grits. All of those things innovated by Black Americans. I can go even further than that. But the point of the matter is...
Can I ask you something, Malcolm?
Yeah.
Malcolm, while I have you and Tariq both here with microphones open, and Alpha, just be patient, hon. You're up next. Someone just messaged me and asked me to ask you, gentlemen, this question. Well, one, Tariq, have you accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior? That's
Great question. Okay. Well,
hold on. Hold your answer. Okay. The second question is a little bit more provocative, but I'm looking forward to your answers. Okay. Why didn't Malcolm X and MLK ever ask for reparations? That's the question in my queue.
They did. They did. That's why I wanted to bring out to that last guy who said that MLK was about love. MLK, before he died, said, I was coming to get my check. Now, everybody wants to talk about angry Black man. You can't think of a Black man who tried to be more peaceful, who tried to be non-threatening, even though he was powerful. And yet, after integration happened, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said it didn't cost this nation a thing to desegregate the buses in the schools. He said, but this nation cannot truly have justice until they spend billions to get the Negro out of the slums and the projects in which we were placed. He then went on to talk about how this nation freely gave trillions of dollars, not just to white Americans, but to European immigrants and land and farm equipment, while at the same time denying Black Americans the same right, even though the agricultural scene was largely built by Black Americans. He said we was coming to get our check, and then he was killed. So MLK and Malcolm X both spoke about reparations. You see, I need us to understand what the image of MLK that we like to see, that's called this Disney World image. The image that makes white people, not all, but the ones who are anti-Black, the image that they're comfortable with is that same little sorry quote, judged by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. MLK said a whole lot more than that. He said what a lot of historians are saying, even some Republicans. MLK also said that until this nation does right by the Negro, America will never have peace. And we are seeing that today. There was just a study done by Citigroup. I always cite this last year. If anybody doesn't like this study, you need to go check your bank account, because Citigroup is one of the large financial services in the country. I guarantee you they're probably dealing with your money right now as we speak. They said that anti-Black racism had cost the United States $16 trillion. The U.S. is worth $19.2 trillion. So we would have been twice as wealthier had this nation done reparations in 2000. You go back further, that's more money lost. So for all these people who talk about the deficit, who talk about this nation being wealthy, the most patriotic thing you can do for this nation is demand that they pay Black Americans reparations like they've done for the Japanese, the Native Americans, like they did for people in Guatemala who were forcibly sterilized
real quick?
by the U.S. military. Like they did for the woman in Guatemala who were forcibly sterilized. Every other group has gotten monetary reparations. And for all you Republicans listening to Monica's show on YouTube, you are a hypocrite. And let me tell you why you are a hypocrite. Y'all talk about your two most admired figures, Abraham Lincoln. Then y'all talk about Ronald Reagan. Guess what Abraham Lincoln did? He signed the first reparations bill for Black Americans, Special for Order 15. Guess what Ronald Reagan did? He signed the other reparations bill for Japanese Americans. Reparations has always been a thing Republicans have supported until Black Americans started getting on code and demanding it for ourselves.
Okay, so Marcel, real quick. You don't find it weird that you're sitting here and you're talking about American history and our American presidents? You don't find it weird and find it like the open borders? So we got people coming in from all these other countries that can intimidate and come across and intimidate everything that you're fighting for right now. That's what the reparations is going.
Mimi, listen.
When Biden
Mimi,
got on stage and he said he's going to give
right, 50,000 to illegal immigrants.
Why? So why?
Right.
What is your point? That's our American history.
Oh no, Mimi, hold on, Mimi, you need to look me up. You got to look me up. People call me a bigot. I'm running as a Democrat, for y'all know, and we'll talk about that later. But some of them say that I'm a Republican in disguise, because I'll be damned because Joe Biden got up there after working with Strom Thurmond, a disgusting anti-black bigot in South Carolina. That was Joe Biden's mentor. Joe Biden got up there when he was asked about reparations. You're not going to get me defending the Democrats. Joe Biden said, who's a segregationist, he said the Hispanics were the future and Black Americans just have to learn to work with them. Then, when these illegal immigrants came in our country and broke the law and went to jail like they should have, he wants to give them reparations for being separated from their children. That's very funny coming from the same man who wrote who did the crime bill that locked up more Black Americans than any other piece of legislation in this country's history. I don't find it funny, Mimi. I find it disgusting. I call out the hypocrisy of the Republicans and the Democrats.
That's that thing. Okay, Alpha got to go. Thank you, Marcel. I follow you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you.
And Monica,
thank you, Marcel, for coming back.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, Marcel, for coming back.
Yeah, thanks, Marcel.
By the way, the person who asked, yes.
Yeah, about your faith. Yeah.
Yeah, my faith. Yes, somebody asked, have I accepted Jesus? That's very interesting because Jesus just texted me and he said that y'all need to give me my money for reparations. So I do accept what Jesus just hit me up with. So I accept that. Jesus said, I need thine money. All right. So I accept that. So
every man deserves his wage, right?
Yes.
I get that.
Okay, that's fair. You don't have to answer it. I mean, it's fine. Whatever. It's cool. No, that was just a question that came in. So,
Lord and Savior, my Lord and Savior wants me to get my money. That's what my Lord and Savior wants from me.
See, I'm cool with this as long as there's
I'm not going to argue with God.
No title nobility, right? As long as you could do this without creating a title of nobility for anybody. I mean, it's already bad enough with this whole qualified sovereign immunity stuff that's going on. Like if we can get you paid without having a sovereign immunity situation going on, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Tim, then we have you listen, Tim, you got to talk to America.
Who don't.
Yeah,
you got to talk to America about that. America could have paid us when the price was much lower, 1865. I know, and y'all know, there are white families in this country. I'm not so much mad at the white families. It's the American government. There are white families in this nation. There are banks, insurance companies, you name it, who can all trace their origins back to slave labor. We can trace our pain and trauma back to slave labor. America is the one that caused this issue. You're supposed to take care of your responsibilities. Isn't that what we tell other countries to do as a beacon of democracy? We tell North Korea and Iran and China how they should act. Well, so who tells America how they should act? That's what we as Black Americans have always done. We pushed this nation to live up to their ideals. They could have paid us 1865 like Abraham Lincoln. The party, y'all, Republicans at the party of Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln was going to do that. America did not follow through. Now the debt has increased. Just because you don't pay something doesn't mean the debt goes away. I have land from 1865. My family, we don't get any value from it because it's heirs property. But my family, we have had to pay tens of thousands of dollars in taxes on that property. I didn't get that land, but we inherited it. The same way I inherited that land, America's inherited a debt that they still owe to us. Because had they done it, we would be having a different conversation right now. Black Americans would not be $24,000 only worth, and white Americans at $200,000. We would have truly been a more united nation. It would be different if we were this poor because we just fucked up. Oh, excuse my expression. Sorry. It would be different if we were this poor because we just messed up. But the fact of the matter is we're not here because we, by our own volition, got here. We were here because we were forced to be here. Even if America didn't pay us reparations and just had left us alone and let us stay in our Black Wall Streets, because there were over 50 of them, we would have been good. But the America sat back, let these white malls burn down our cities, and sometimes even gave them military equipment. Right now, I know there are some Republican people mainly who feel that the Biden stole the election or whatever, and they're demanding that something be done about it. It is hypocritical for them to tell Black Americans at the same time, we can't demand, they can't prove, as far as I know, that election was stolen, but we as Black Americans can prove all the stuff that's been done to us. We have Confederate monuments, for God's sake, of the people who did it. It's just hypocritical for one group to feel they have the right to stand up for what they believe, but then to tell us who have fought for this nation that we can't do the same.
Okay. Marcel,
Yeah.
thank you, sir. So, 10, I want
Thank
you
y'all.
to go on. Sure. Hey, and good luck with your race. I want you to inform people about the direction you were just going, and then we're going to, with immunity, and then we're going to go over to Alpha. Thank you.
Yeah, just real brief. I would love to see this continue to be attacked. The qualified and total immunity that was granted in violation of the U.S. Constitution, where people in governance or leadership positions cannot be prosecuted for their civil rights violations. If not, fundamentally, it's actually civil liberties. Okay. We get into this argument about civil rights. These are natural rights. They are not something that you can, make exist or take away. They come from God. They don't come from, a bunch of men who, are in power at any time. God granted the natural right to be free, and that should never be something that's in question or a code that can be undermined. The second part of that, this aspect of the 13th Amendment, slavery in there, that needs to go. And the second other part of that, the 14th Amendment, property tax. Hello, that's a tax on all of us. That takes away from our ability to hand down something to the next generation. But this, fundamentally though, we do not want to create a condition where anybody becomes a nobility going forward, because it was bad before the American Revolution. It will be bad after the American Revolution.
But wealth and resources were passed down to white society, and it's still being passed down now. So why is one nobility better than another nobility? Because
Neither
that's
are good. They're not.
Neither are
Fundamental.
good. I
In
agree.
the end, neither are. You're correct.
but
100%.
you haven't had compensatory justice by compensating the people that's been disenfranchised. So obviously, you think the white nobility is good
How would I think that they were good? In
because
what way?
you haven't dismantled it, and you have not
Well, I
provided
haven't. I've
compensatory
been
justice.
working to dismantle it for a long time, since I
No, not
first
Tariq,
found about
that's
it.
what I'm saying.
when
Is
you say
that
that we should compensate.
it's rough when you start painting with broad strokes because you don't know what certain people have been doing behind the scenes. Now I know that
The system is
it
still.
serves to.
So
I
I'm
understand
just
that,
the
but when you're coming
system is
into spaces like this,
whatever
and
you're
we've
doing
got
is not
welcome arms
okay, ma'am.
I may not
and
be effective.
microphones,
I may
The
not be
right,
effective in any way, shape, or
right,
form, but
but it's not. We're not trying.
I don't give you an A for effort. I'm talking about what's being done, not what you're trying to do, not what you're thinking about doing. I'm talking about what's being done because other groups, they get stuff done for them. Japanese, they had stuff done. Jewish people, they had stuff done for them. Hispanic groups, they have things tangibly done for them. When it comes to us, all of a sudden it becomes, well, we're thinking about it. Our heart
then
is
why
in
don't
the
we
right
get
place.
something done?
No,
Let's
let's
get
get done.
something done.
Exactly.
You want to get
Let's
something
get
done?
that
Let's
check.
get something done.
Let's
Yeah.
get
I 100% agree with that. Like, how about also
okay.
we kick China out of our situation so they don't eat our
Amen.
lunch and then while we're doing
Oh,
that.
okay.
I don't
Yeah.
want to transfer money to you to be in debt to
Okay.
China. That's
Speaking of
retarded.
Exactly.
you guys, the government is giving money to Asians now. There's billions of dollars being allocated to Asians because of Asian hate crimes. Okay, give us some of that money you're giving them. Okay, don't talk about China. Y'all giving Asians and Chinese and y'all giving them money. You're not giving us anything, but a lot of hey, let's just talk about it. Let's figure it out. Let's start getting the checks rolling, and then we can talk about justice. Right?
Didn't that come out of the white people in DNC though? Like,
Okay,
weren't they the ones that
that's
did
good
that?
cop, bad cop. I don't do good cop, bad cop. I don't do
I mean,
Republican.
just saying,
That's
I
good
can't
cop.
remember any of the
Democrats are
Republicans, like
two
even the
birds, two
annoying
birds.
ones.
Sir, I don't do Republicans and Democrats. That's a whole good cop, bad cop thing. They're both
Okay,
law.
yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
I hear
Don't,
you. Alpha's been waiting forever though. We
Yeah,
got to let him
Alpha.
talk.
Let's go to Alpha. Thank you. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't interrupt anybody, so I hope the same respect is paid forward. So first thing I'll say is definition of supremacy isn't what was explained. The definition of supremacy, by definition, is power and authority. It has nothing to do with I can kill you and there's nothing done about it. That can be an interpretation, but the definition is what it is. We're not going to start changing definitions. The next thing is when we say they, let's be very clear. A lot of us conservatives have had staunch issues with us sending money to Ukraine, have had major issues with money being sent to China. We are not okay with our government sending money to other countries when we see the suffrage that's taking place within our own borders. So let's be very clear. The Democratic Party and liberals, along with a few Republicans, are the ones that support that, not your actual patriotic conservative Americans. So let's make that very clear to the people in here that are listening, because there's a lot of people in here listening because they want to hear truth. The next thing is, when a child is born, when my daughter was born, she doesn't owe anything to anybody, and nobody owes anything to her. That's not the way it works. When we talk about reparations, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong on this, I was under the understanding that the reparations we paid to the Chinese slaves on the railroad were the people that actually undergone it. It wasn't something that continued on for 6, 7, or 8 generations. And if I'm mistaken in that, correct me. But here's the point I'm trying to make. If a man commits murder and he gets away with it and we can't find him, we don't go find his child and throw his child in prison for the crimes that he committed. Doesn't mean anybody's okay with it, but people are held accountable for what they did, not for what the people before them did. The other thing is, I was in one of your spaces, Tariq, when I brought up a question to you. When you brought up foundational Black Americans were Black Americans that were born in the United States. They weren't ones that were brought here through slavery or whatever. They were ones that were born here. And he said that's the reason that they were owed reparations.
I didn't say that, but go. I didn't say that.
That is what you said, and it was a recorded space. You said more than that, but I'm summarizing. So my question to you was, well, if that's the case, you have a large part of the United States that belong to Mexico and Mexicans. I go, and that was conquered. We all know the history on that. I said, so wouldn't they be entitled to reparations under the same concept that you're saying? And you said, absolutely no, that you're anchor baby, you're this, you're that. So for you to say it applies to one group of people, but another group of people that the same thing was done to in a different way. I mean, they were killed through war and all that as well.
Mexicans did not build the United States. Foundational Black Americans did.
Well, then I suggest you visit California and you go and look at the agriculture and all the Mexicans that were working in fields for pennies with no unions. They were in a modern day slavery. They were just paid pennies for the work that they were doing.
That was labor that came over after the country was already established. So that's
then I could say this. Then guess what? There's no slavery. It was cheap labor, and people just didn't fight against it. I could say the same.
And they left their country to come do that cheap labor. So it wasn't that bad.
They didn't leave their country because that country belonged to them. It was just taken.
No, it didn't.
The same.
No, it didn't.
So you're saying California, you're saying Arizona, parts of Texas, that didn't belong to Mexico?
No.
California was founded by the Spanish.
It was conquered by the Spanish. California is named after a mythological Black queen, Queen Califia, because there were Muslims who were Black coming from Spain over here to the Americas.
I'll wrap
go ahead.
I'll wrap up my point with this: is if you want $1 in your bank account, you work for it. Period. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what gender you are. I don't care what race you are. You want the dollar, you earn it. I live in Southern California where we see these tribal lands where the people are paid 20, 30, in some situations, if they're high enough in the bloodline, $40,000 a month. And what I can tell you, what I've seen, the real life scenario of that is when $1 is not earned, it's not valued. And we see prolific prostitution, drugs, crime rates, all this stuff, because I didn't interrupt you. You give anybody money that they didn't earn and work for, it's never going to be respected. So here's the thing, everybody, is you cannot preach united when you're trying to say that one race is more powerful than another. The problem that we have today is we're seeing Black supremacists who are using the same thing that white supremacists use, the errors and the criminal and the evil actions they did. We're seeing modern day Black supremacists using the emotions of history to generate more hate and more division right now. And that's not the way this country operates. I'm sorry. You want something, you work for it. All of us together, period.
Okay. Now, since you're talking about the West Coast and the Western expansion, a lot of the land owned by white people here in the West Coast and in some of the Western states and the Midwestern areas, they got that land from the Homestead Act, land that they did not work for. All you had to do was be white and file a $10 filing fee, and you can get a bunch of free land. So y'all didn't work for a lot of the land that's out here that's been passed down generationally. That's why all of these white people have these big lots and all of these big fields and all of these acreages out here. It was free land given to you simply because you were white. A lot of the
Okay,
jobs,
Kyrie, I got a question for you
ma'am,
because
why are you, ma'am,
no, I
ma'am,
just want
please
to
don't cut
know
me off.
because you
Ma'am, don't,
hold on. I
ma'am,
just want to know. Let me ask you the
ma'am,
question. Let me ask
ma'am,
you the question.
why are
So
you cutting me off? Because
I
your
just want to
arguments are
know
vague.
how much of a monthly payment do you feel that's desired to you off
Ma'am,
of what you're.
ma'am, you're not even FBA. So this is the conversations that's not
Oh
even
wow,
full.
I got to be part of a group. Okay, go
Okay, you're
ahead.
not FBA, ma'am. So you're not getting anything anyway. You should be glad that you're here. Okay, I'm talking to the people in the dominant society. Okay, you don't have to run interference for them. All right. Like I was saying, the people in the dominant white society, you didn't really have to work for anything. Your whiteness became monetized. When people say, well, I came over here, my family came over with $10. No, you had $1 million worth of whiteness, and that's why you came over. Whiteness has a monetary value in a system of white supremacy. So you always have an advantage under an unjust system that's racially based. And pointing the finger at the victims of white supremacy is another white supremacist tactic.
So my question is, it just leads to the question, you're given $1 billion or trillions of dollars, trillions upon trillions of dollars.
Yeah, trillions.
Is your ideology okay? Right. Well, I am for as long as it's needed till you feel that it's done, right? Then what is your perspective? Are you going to dominate everybody else as you felt you were dominated at that point? I just want to know.
That's the problem with white supremacy, this crazy projection. The fact that you think us being compensated equates to us dominating you, that's a projection, sir. And we don't think like
Well,
that.
people,
That's
no, I'm talking people do that. That's humans. Like it
no,
doesn't
it's
matter what color you are. If you
sir.
give a whole lot of people a whole lot of money, they do that.
No,
That's always a fear with anybody. I don't care if there's a whole lot of white people. If you gave them billions of dollars, I'd be very scared of what they would do.
well, sir,
Period.
it's money that's
This is just the
owed.
question I would ask anybody.
We're talking about a debt that's owed. Okay, we're talking about something that's owed. It's not just giving money out of the kindness of your heart. This was something that's owed, that was owed because of a very vile thing that was done to a specific group of people for a very long period of time. Okay? So compensatory justice doesn't mean that we're going to turn around and do the same. We don't even think like that. We want what's owed. And that's the thing with people in the dominant society. They're so used to us being a permanent underclass, which is what they want us to be. Any form of justice looks like a loss to them because your identity is wrapped up on our degradation. That
Hey,
type of
Tariq, I have a question along
that,
those lines. Along that line, hold on. Along the line of what you're talking about right now. Someone earlier said that they believe that Black Americans are a special class or should be. Do you agree with that?
yeah, we should be a protected class just like Native Americans are. We should be a protected class like that, meaning that we should have certain areas that we govern ourselves. When I was in Arizona, you had Native Americans who got all types of land. They have their own police force, they have their own ambulances, hospitals, schools, and people just can't go run up on their reservations doing God knows what to them. They are protected. We need those same protections because we're the most marginalized group, we're the most targeted group, we're the most despised group by the dominant society. We have 24 hours of anti-Black propaganda on television nonstop, on radio nonstop. We have these terrorist attacks against our elderly and our soft targets. So we have to be a protected class. Absolutely. Wouldn't you agree?
Are aren't protected classes sovereign?
Are they?
Well, I mean that's what I was
Yeah,
asking.
right.
What's your
Well,
opinion?
well, Asians, they have certain crime bills where you can't commit a crime against an Asian person. They're making them special protected classes now. Are they sovereign when they come here? Because they become U.S. citizens when they become here. They're not quote unquote sovereign, right?
Well, then, I mean, the fundamental basis of equality, I mean, if we're talking about justice under God, not under man, is that
Uh-oh.
there should be no sovereignty with anybody. But if we create a class of protected people anywhere, I don't care what color they are, maybe be white or otherwise, that's still a problem for me.
But no, it's not a problem because we do have a number one protected class in America, white supremacists. That's a protected class. Not only is it a protected class, you get a certain immunity from law. You can get away
I,
with murder
I
and
would
not.
love to see the codes that give
uh,
make that a
It's the
protected class
it's
so we can
common law.
fight it. We need to
It's the,
nail that on the wall and be like, those codes need to go.
but it's not
If
going
that,
anywhere. That's the problem.
but you said that there's a law that is establishing
Common
a
law,
sovereign
common law. No, no,
sovereign
no.
white supremacy. I want to know what those are so that we can
Common
fight
law.
them.
Common law. The common law. I'm going to use Kyle Rittenhouse as another example. When he was in court, what happened with Kyle Rittenhouse, that was common law white supremacy, where a judge sat up in court and did all types of I'm white and I say so tactics by saying the people he killed could not be labeled as victims. Him saying that he wanted to kill people and killing people, there was no correlation, so you can't bring any evidence against him. You can't show evidence against him being a part of these white supremacist groups. You couldn't bring none of that. That's common law white supremacy.
Hold on.
It's not.
If that's common, hold on. If that's common law white
That's common law white
supremacy,
supremacy.
okay. So then here, so with that, if that's the definition of it, I'll tell you right now, I have been in court cases as the investigating detective agent where I have had Mexican defendants, black defendants, where I was not allowed to tell the jury about their past criminal history because how it could have influenced them. So there must also be black supremacy and Mexican supremacy that's in the judicial system because
I
I
do
have
not
been
believe.
told.
I don't believe you're telling the truth.
Okay, here's the thing.
I
Do
don't
the
believe you're telling
legwork.
the truth,
Here's the thing. I've told you where I
especially in a
used to
murder case.
work. So especially in a murder case, I'll tell you right now. I'll tell you right. And anyone that doubts this, Tariq knows where I used to work. He knows where I used to live. All that information was provided to him. You can go and look up every single homicide, attempt homicide, and gang case I worked, and you will find. I'm not saying in every case, but you will find in a large number of cases where we are ordered by the judge when the jury is not in place on certain crimes that we could not talk about that they had committed. I had a guy that had been arrested with prior firearms,
You're
couldn't talk
conflating
about it.
non sequiturs,
No,
sir.
no, 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 no. If I'm
You're,
conflating, you're
you're
conflating because you're
conflating
bringing
non
up Kyle
sequiturs.
Rittenhouse. Then you're conflating Kyle Rittenhouse. You can't
No, I'm
use
not.
a standard. You can't use a standard to define something, and then when someone brings that same standard in a
It's
different
not the same
situation,
standard.
saying that okay, then you can't
We're
use it.
talking apples and oranges.
That's either a definition or it's not. It's not only it doesn't only it's not a definition if it only
False.
applies to your narrative. It's
You
either
just
across the line or it's not. And if you don't think that, you're a black supremacist.
okay. You're just spewing word salad, sir. So let me finish my
Oh,
thoughts here.
hold on. So if I'm
Okay.
spewing the word salad,
You're
I'm
just doing
saying
words, sir.
what I'm saying because I'm learning it from you because you're pretty good at it. If you're
No,
saying that was white privilege and white supremacy
white
because of the
supremacy.
certain rules that were applied in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, and I'm telling you that those same rules have been applied in cases where I was a case agent along with
That's a
other
lie.
cases.
And that's a lie. I'm saying
How,
that you're telling a
so,
lie. You're lying.
so,
You're lying through
so
your
you're
teeth.
saying okay. So
I'm
you're
saying that
saying
you're
that I'm
lying.
lying. So
You're
I
lying through
want
your
there's
There's
over
no case.
1,500 people.
There's
There's
none.
only
No
15.
case.
There's only 15.
None.
There's 1,500 people that are in here. What I will challenge you guys to do, because it's not just my case, call your local district attorney's office and
Okay.
ask them the question if there's certain defendants where their criminal history cannot get brought up. It exists in every county of every
That's not
state
what I
in this
said.
country.
Conflating non sequiturs. There's no case where a black person sat up here and said they wanted to kill some people and then did it, and then a judge said, hey, we can't show evidence of this person saying that. There's no cases like that at all. And you're conflating non sequiturs and false equivalencies, sir, which further proves my point. But let me go on. I don't want to waste time talking in circles with this gentleman here. We live in a
No,
system.
you don't want to waste time addressing facts, and that's
Because
okay. We catch it. Continue. No,
you
you
like to
can
just talk to
continue. Go ahead.
Hey, Tariq, I just want to tell you, and I love you as a Christian and also as a man of God. I think you're awesome, and I love that you're speaking to this, and I appreciate it. Just so you
Yeah.
know.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Well, again, God wants you to give me my money. So if you really love me,
If I can do something about it,
love
I mean, I'm more broke than you, so
You
I don't
knew
know how I'm
that
going
was
to do that.
coming.
Oh, you're not broke as me. Boy, you are white. All right, you are way richer than me, and I got a couple of millions, but my millions don't touch your whiteness. You got more rights than me with your whiteness. All right, let's be very clear. All
I
right.
can't capitalize on that, so we'll see how that goes.
But I think
Oh, yes,
think
you can. Yes, you can. Okay,
I
yeah.
think where
Not
the
down. You don't have white supremacist cops shooting your family down like they do in my community. Yeah, your whiteness protects you, sir. You got millions of dollars worth of whiteness. Yes, indeed. But
I
anyway,
think where the conversation usually breaks down, I mean, like if we were to create a visualization of group dynamics and we found correlations between like political affiliation, race, just some of these simple models that would make it pretty easy to predict how people are going to interact with each other when they talk about issues of race, class, economics. You know, it's usually just at some point gets to a back and forth where there's not really a path forward except to find ways to make ad hominem insults or argue that the plight of one group is worse than the other. But I did want to come back to the title of the room because I think there are some interesting points there. Like the title is White Supremacy Narratives. And so I think there's two things happening in American politics right now. That there are narratives of white supremacy that maybe media and certain groups have run with, where the term gets thrown around loosely. And then I think in academia, and I mean, there's even been conversations, Brookings Institute hosted conversations on Twitter Spaces about white nationalism, and you have papers from the Wilson Center and all these other think tanks. But I think that the narrative idea takes away from the reality that it looks like there are some legitimate forms of white nationalism that are entering American politics. I guess we could say re-entering. Right, there was a time where if a political candidate was open about any type of white nationalist rhetoric or beliefs, they didn't get elected. Look at what happened to George C. Wallace before he went to run for president in the late 60s. Somebody shot him. It paralyzed him. But he wrote extensively about you know, white nationalist thinking sentiment. Some academics would call it like nationalism with a tone of anti-globalism. So I think the politics get screwed up because you can take pro-black or pro-white thinking and you can weaponize it to some degree. I know earlier people were talking about reparations, Black Lives Matter, you know, some of these scenarios. But for me, I think that it is still concerning that if we get away from the media narratives, I believe there's legitimate forms of white nationalist sentiment or expressions that are entering American politics. I think like an obvious example was the Fuentes event that was hosted across the street from CPAC that Marjorie Taylor Greene attended. I don't think that's a media talking point. I think you can look at Fuentes' rhetoric. It's pretty well documented. It's recent. You can pick up on some of the talking points of this, I guess we could call it new white nationalist, which tends to be, like, we're not even talking about disenfranchised, if we had to use these oversimplified words, white people in Alabama, Mississippi, New Orleans. We're talking about white people from affluent backgrounds that attend universities like Yale, like Harvard, like Brown. So these people in this group around the Fuentes types are developing these ideas that they're actually seems to be having some success entering into American politics. I don't know if you'll have an openly white nationalist candidate that gets elected as a governor or a mayor or even as a congressperson or a senator. But I think that's what people are trying to respond to. And the media is not making room for that conversation because, like people brought up, a lot of the coverage has a lot of hyperbole now.
And then they've gone through, it seems like if we just look at the last decade, they've gone through various iterations in how they talk about, for example, mass shooters, how much face time they give them, how they talk about their ethnic, religious, or national affiliations, right? Because people have fears around, like xenophobia, or people that would carry out some type of attack and justify it off of retribution. So I just wanted to say there's like a narrative, but then I also think there is a reality that white nationalism is an idea that's entering American politics in a more public manner.
It's always been
Christopher, Tariq, hold on one second. So, Christopher, thank you for bringing it back to the original intent and topic. And that was my point, was that it has become so hyperbolic that when everyone's a racist, no one's a racist. When everyone's a white supremacist, no one's really white supremacist. I mean, it has become, the narrative has become, it is narrative war space, right? And that's the context in which I tend to bring my audience back around. And that may offend some people that I don't have more conversations like this, honestly. And I happen to think it's well.
Oh yeah, white supremacy is very.
So I'm open to more conversations of this nature because I think it's healing. I think it's helpful, and I think it's educational. And I think some of us disagree with others, and we call each other liars and whatever, and we're all still here. And somebody just said they love Tariq, so there. And praise God. And Tariq's convinced that Jesus is going to give him his check. And okay, I'm not offended by that.
Yeah, he's going to make the white supremacists give it to me.
So,
yeah, that's what.
But if
Jesus
I pay
was black
taxes
too.
And y'all, and you think, you and Marcel think that there's some magic tree behind the United States Capitol that produces this money that is the U.S. government. What I'm saying is that it is taxation, and I'm not a big fan of taxation, as it were. No. So hold on. So let me finish. Hold on. So here's the deal. My whole point of bringing this room up was because I'm about to bring him up to front and center, because this guy yesterday went off on all kinds of crazy, putting up pictures like this. Hold on, which some of y'all are going to laugh. And apparently the poor guy didn't know. There he is, Mr. Jerry Saltz, okay, who is a very highly respected art critic out of New York City. These are his tweets. If you're watching on YouTube, you guys can see this. And he says, because Republicans, okay? And then because Republicans, right? And this is a white family with air guns, airsoft guns, not to be confused with weapons of mass destruction or paintball guns. They don't feel good, but they're certainly not out, causing mass shootings. And so we understand what the narrative is here, right? And Jerry may actually feel threatened by white Americans and Republicans because of guns. I don't know. He lives in New York City. I'm of the belief that if more people had been armed in New York City, the latest idiot would have been taken out. So that's just me. Then we have Planned Parenthood. This is another one of Jerry's illustrious tweets. So Planned Parenthood, white family, all right, with some type of weapons. Alpha, maybe you can speak to that. That's not my area of expertise. Excuse me. So Jerry has a large audience, right? And Jerry has aligned things of this nature with people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and other candidates, and which, Christopher, you just alluded to. She may be one of these white nationalists because she was over at old Fuentes' event. And she's not here to defend herself. I could invite her, I guess, but I don't know that she'd come in. But I think he's making a very interesting connection. Then we have, who started out my show today, this interesting woman who has done more to divide all of us, in my humble opinion, than Republicans and Democrats put together, because she has a vested interest in doing so. She says Republican leadership has, quote, enabled white nationalism, and calls on her fellow party members to renounce and reject these views after a racially motivated mass shooting in Buffalo, New York on Saturday left 10 people dead. Now, let me tell you something about this pretty white lady. She has never stood up in defense of the Black community, as it were, with Black gentlemen who were gunning down other Americans. So this is nothing more than a political talking point for little Miss Liz Cheney. And those of us who understand the sins of the Republicans' past are not afraid to call this crap out, because it's exactly what it is. And it pits all of us against each other, and I hate it with every fiber of my being. As a political pundit, I find it abhorrent. There she is again. So, Jerry, let's go back to Jerry. So I retweet Jerry yesterday, and I said, Jerry, trust me, honey, when the shit hits the fan, nobody is going to be looking for an art critic to save them, right? Because that was my response to, you're afraid of people who you don't even know. You're casting dispersions, and you're casting a really wide net on gun